All right, we are back with another episode of Breaking with Brian.
8, right?
Episode 8. I can't figure out the lighting. My lighting is awful. I got like a
Plaid. Not bad.
I got one of these. This is like $5 on Amazon. I was like, maybe this will help.
Look, I think if you didn't say anything about it being $5, I wouldn't have known. I wouldn't have. Yeah.
I get a lot. I'm messing with the lighting in the studio here, but whatever. That's why I like to do just the podcast.
Yeah.
How you doing, Brian?
I'm good, man. It's Friday. What is it? 4:45 p.m. Eastern.
Yep.
And yeah, I'm doing good. You know, in the middle of small agency judging and all that fun stuff. And
who's gonna win?
Oh yeah, I'll just say it out here. But you know, it's not always, you know, the agencies you would expect, you know. So
what small agency? We talked about that before.
Yeah. Smart Awards, it's our annual awards for agencies 150 employees or less.
Okay, that's what the 150 or less. It's in Boston.
And independent owned, you know. So these are agencies that they don't always get the shine, you know.
Give them some love.
But these are also some really well-known agencies that are doing Super Bowl spots like High Dive and American Common and all those agencies, you know. So it's a good mix, you know. You get agencies from like the middle, you know, from the Midwest,
yeah,
you know, that don't get a lot of attention sometimes, but are doing really good work. And the international category is always fun too, because you get, you know, small agencies from Canada and India and other countries, you know, that you don't always cover. So.
Fun. Well, I'm excited for that, to see the results of that. Maybe I'll show up.
What's going on with you, man?
Oh, just working, doing new business, balancing out new business and communications and internal stuff, like trying to get this Work Wednesday initiative at Havas Chicago off the ground every Wednesday at 4:30 p.m. We have a creative wall that we want some team to talk about what's going on, whether the work is produced or not, get some feedback, have a couple drinks, get some popcorn, get the people together, celebrate the work. So that's been a fun little internal initiative I've been working on.
Is that to build more like culture and more camaraderie? Like,
yeah, I think the heart of it is like to celebrate the work that we create and like get feedback if it's not produced yet, or just to like, even on pitches, like if we win or lose, we still want to showcase like the hard work that we did. So that's going to be every week, no matter what, unless we have a day off, like just throw something on the wall and talk about it.
That's cool though.
Yeah. We'll see if I can get it figured out. But I think I had to cancel it 3 times. So I did an apology video. Maybe I'll share that. I recorded.
You're a bit of a masochist. Like you like these like weekly engagements. I don't know. Like
oh yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what I get myself into sometimes. What are we gonna talk about, Brian? We got a couple things. We have a special guest. It's Can we say?
Yeah, sure. Recurring guest at this point.
Right. Our
Lindsay
first one.
Rittenhouse, our senior reporter at Age. He did a really I thought timely and insightful piece on the diversity landscape in the industry and the role of DE&I, and is it disappearing? And, you know, so stay tuned for that at the later half of the episode.
Yeah. Thank you, Lindsay Rittenhouse, senior reporter at Age. Recurring guest, first time we've had a recurring guest.
Yeah. Milestones.
Episode 8. We're still doing it. Every 2 weeks we post an episode. So Lindsay will be at the back half, but we're going to talk a little bit.
Maybe your mic's getting tired of you. I don't know. Maybe. Yeah.
I got to switch it over.
Oh, really?
There it is. All right. We're keeping it in there. We're not editing out.
Doing it live.
We're doing it live.
We're doing it. Yeah.
What do we want to talk about though before Lindsay comes on? We can say whatever we want.
Yeah.
It's our show.
I think it's your favorite topic, Gen Z.
Oh, yeah.
Well, look, I mean, in case people didn't see it, um, Adage is calling on Gen Z to write maybe the next great column piece, article, on Adage. We just put a call out this week that anyone 26 years old or younger, we want to hear from you guys. We want to hear pitches for just guest pieces on what is top of mind for the Gen Z audience right now. It could be tech, it could be anything, honestly, creativity, diversity. So yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah,
You know,
it's
I want
called
to,
Gen Z Voices, the
yeah,
series dedicated to exploring Gen Z perspective on marketing, technology, social media, and the future of the ad industry. So I think it's free, right? You just
yeah.
essays about 800 to 850 words, but they
Mhm.
can be longer. You email genz at adage.com. I kind of want to do this. I am in that. I would talk about why Brian's episode is the most interesting thing in ad trade coverage.
How old are you? I don't even know.
26.
Oh yeah,
I'm Gen Z.
gotta get on it, man.
I'm gonna get on it.
This is the last year for you to.
They're probably like, no, I'm a Gen Z forever, Brian.
No, but I meant like, the cutoff's 26, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I am the oldest of Gen Z,
Yeah.
which is fun.
I'm young. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So I have to defend Gen Z whenever people are like, oh,
Oh,
they're,
really?
yeah. Because I'm like, no, they're good. We're good.
No, but look, I thought it was good because we've really ramped up our Gen Z coverage, starting from last year especially. And I thought this was a great way to like give Gen Z a chance to say something. And a lot of times when we do op-eds, it is, the CEO of a major agency or whatever. It's a big time executive. And, we don't always get to hear from Gen Z, people like yourself who are doing big things, but maybe, like you're not the CEO yet of a major agency, So I don't know. What are your thoughts? What do you think?
I think they should do this. Get in there, make a name for yourself. You have something to say, get it out there. It's a great opportunity. I just got a text as well from Ken Bates. He sent me, that's why I was a little distracted there. Ken Bates is like a writer here in Chicago. He works at Vital Proteins right now.
Okay.
He's like a research guy and just insanely smart copywriter, just loves this industry. He just sent me a text that Greg Hahn mentioned us in a YouTube video, Mischief Mindset Masterclass. So I kind of want to find that and play it.
Hey,
What he said.
shouldn't you have mentioned
Yeah.
like breaking into it? Or?
Yeah. So he mentioned.
Oh, that's massive, bro.
Anyways, if he sends me the timestamp, I'll pull it up.
Yeah, dude. Let's do that. That's funny.
Yeah. Maybe he talks about our segment here. It's
Maybe
an hour-long video.
maybe he's just talking shit. He's like, man, breaking and entering, one of the worst.
Oh my! Oliver's episode's good.
Yeah, I gotta check that out.
They're fun.
What are your what was your big takeaway? Like if we had to take one.
Well, that was the day we recorded. It was the earthquake in New York.
Mm.
Big takeaways. I was re-listening to it because it was a while ago and talked about, loving the company you work for and embodying the brand and like how do you delineate the two? Because he's all in on mischief. But then I asked him about like having kids and stuff. And I
Yeah.
thought that was interesting, like because I see myself in him. I want to be like him. So I asked him about family life and like did having kids make him more hungry and more eager? And he said no, it actually like helped him create boundaries because when you love what you do so much, you want to work all the time. But when you have kids, it forces you to create those boundaries and really focus on what's important and balance out better. So
That's
that
good.
was a fun little portion of the conversation.
You should have an episode on something like that, like parents and industry.
Yeah, caregivers. Yeah,
Yeah, how do you deal with that? No, I think that's a great thing. Hey, look, setting the boundaries before you have family or kids or whatever, I think it's even better if you can, you know. I think it's important for just your mental health.
Totally. Maybe we need to get like a boundary expert to help me out and help you. I don't know if you have the same issue.
I did actually until I would say until this year. It was a bit, challenging to kind of separate the two and um just your personal life and your work life. And when you're younger, you're just like so focused on just, I guess, going up the ladder and shit and all that. And you can't sacrifice your mental health, because you're gonna burn out and it's just not gonna work out, in the long run. So
Maybe I should write on the Gen Z column about this.
yeah, dude.
My desire to burn out, it seems like. How do we mitigate that? A call to help.
I don't know how you have it yet. Do you ever feel like you burn?
No, I bring in, like, for breaking and entering, I bring in my friends to work on it with me. So it's a good balance. Like, even when we're in the trenches. So, we're podcasting. There is no trenches. Like, we're still like hanging out and just having a good time, and I can trust them.
Well, I think that's a good lesson too. Like, surround yourself with people you like if you're gonna work up,
Totally. Just like when you are looking at an agency or a publication to work at, if you are going to be working long hours because you love the stuff that you're doing, you want to be with good people that
Yeah.
are friendly.
But yeah, look, I think this episode, I just wanted to, beyond the Gen Z, I wanted to highlight one story, and then I did want to dedicate the rest of the story to I thought was the important topic we talked about with Lindsay. So yeah, this story, I actually worked on it with Ewan Larkin, our agency reporter, who, if you haven't met yet, you should. He's killing it and doing great things, and hasn't been here that long yet, and he's doing great. So, but yeah, this story, title is "Why Marketers Are Taking Over Reviews from Consultants and How Agencies Can Adapt." New business. I mean, I know you like new business, Gino. But yeah, like, new business is the lifeblood of the industry, and we just started hearing that more CMOs are just handling things. I don't know if you're seeing that, but we're just hearing that there are some less consulting pitches. But I don't think that's necessarily the large pitches, right? Like, we spoke to John Cook, the CEO of VML, and he said 75% of the pitches he's seeing is the consultant led. But then we spoke to a major consultant who said reviews for them was down 50% year over year. And, why does this matter? Right. And I think it matters because, the tried and true formula is like, get to know consultant, get to know a CMO, right? If CMOs are taking over more, I think the formula changes for agencies on how do you pitch, who should you get to know. You should always be getting to know CMOs, but do the CMOs have the same bandwidth to know as much about different agencies as consultants do, right? That becomes a challenge where, I've spoken to CMOs and they, they'll be honest and tell me they don't know a lot of agencies. They don't follow certain parts of the industry as closely, which I know sounds like funny, but they're busy, they're focused on much, and so your PR, your marketing becomes even more important as a agency. And that could be tough if you're not as known or you're not getting as much coverage or anything like that. I don't know, and yeah, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but that was kind of like the big takeaway.
So less consultancies are in the mix, you're saying?
Well, on some level, I think,
Right.
yeah. But I also think CMOs are getting a little smarter. These are people that have worked on the agency side, and we had some people say that some CMOs feel like they can handle these reviews on their own. It could be a cost cutting thing, so it's just an interesting trend happening.
Yeah, I think, and I turned the mic off. I think it's broken finally. I think it's done.
After all this time.
Yeah. It's kind of sad. I might have to do like a little
Little funeral.
Yeah. Um, I think with the landscape, the competitive landscape of all the different agencies out there, like we need to figure out a way to brand ourselves as agencies and stick out and it starts with the work. I'm a firm believer that it starts with the work that that agencies create, and that should be the new business driver. But then it's also culture. How do you show up in the world? How do you interact? Like, what's the press looking like? So if there's any, if it's a reminder to agencies that they need to do better advertising, I like that. And I think any sort of reminder for that motivation is crucial because it raises a standard for us all. So that's just like my high level Friday at 4:02 p.m. Dead brain quick synopsis. If it's pushing us to do better, then I like that.
Well, what do like, do you think it's harder for like an agency like Havas, obviously, like you have a different like you have a heritage and things like that, like versus like if you're just starting out now, and like you kind of can build your narrative or story from the jump, Like,
Yeah, you're talking about like small versus like heritage brand agency.
yeah, yeah,
Well, I think any agency can create good work and they can, get the right people and get, and push what they're currently doing. Yeah, sometimes I think about small agencies and how they have that opportunity to create their own narrative too. But there's also benefits of being in a large agency where you can tap into all those resources and you can tap into that heritage. So, it's a balance for sure.
yeah. But yeah, look, it's just, seeing how that's moving. It's important just to like, I think acknowledge it. I think, some people like to, feel like it's just a fad or it's just a phase for certain things. And um, I do think like new business is like getting a little more complicated than it's ever been. And we're seeing agencies build new offerings like the X&O guys we had on. And, like, is the future just like building different offerings now to like make yourself look more attractive to client? I don't know. But
New tool, new system, procedures.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, that's just like, I thought that was interesting. And like, I wanted to highlight before we got into the big, meaty part of this. I don't know. Any final thoughts before we hand it over to Lindsay? Like,
Let me see if I can pull up this clip of what Greg said about breaking entering.
you find it?
I have the timestamp 54:42. And I might edit this out if it's bad.
It can't be bad. It can't. He was speaking at where?
This was on a YouTube video, The Mischief Mindset Masterclass by Greg Hahn, posted by Broke Ad School.
Oh yeah, I remember. I saw. I didn't watch the video, but I saw it when you posted. Yeah.
54:42.
Yeah.
Any podcast recommendations?
There it is.
Podcast, Fearless, Creative, by Charles Daly. Trying to think of the offhand. I mean, I love, because I'm a big fan of like psychology and behavioral economics. I love Hidden Brain, which just, how people think. I like cultural podcasts. Breaking and Entering is a great podcast. It's all about how to get into advertising. They talk to a lot of good leaders and people who are trying to break in, and it's really valuable resource that, again, I wish I had when I was trying to get in.
Thank you, Greg.
How did that feel?
Feels good. He's a good guy, and he's obviously a icon right now and has been for a while now. So, thanks for being a part of it, Brian.
Yeah, I mean, you should, if you don't soundbite that and put it on your website or whatever. I don't know, man. Like,
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
No, look, do that. And like, it's genuine when Greg's saying it, I think he's a genuine dude. So, yeah, no, big ups.
Big ups. Good work, Brian.
Yeah.
On to Lindsay now, and I'll hopefully edit some of this stuff down. So
Yeah. And, I don't know if we wanted to tease that our next episode yet, or if we want to do that.
Ooh, yeah, let's do that.
Well, yeah, just before we cut away, I want people to just make sure they tune into our next few episodes. We're gonna have some big guests, and Can coming up. We'll have a special episode related to Can. But yeah, we're working together on getting some interesting guests, executives in the industry, and we're gonna try to mix up the format. So I hope people like it.
Yeah, pitch us.
Yeah, pitch us. Anyone?
Gino at breakenterpod.com. Feel free to do your thing.
Yeah, he's much more organized than I am. So reach out.
For now,
We'll see.
All right.
Thanks, man.
All right. All right. We're switching gears, Brian. We have a special guest, a recurring guest now. Is this our first recurring guest, Brian?
I think it is. Yeah.
I feel so honored.
Well, we'll try not to, tire you out too much with all the
Lindsay, you're going to be on call. You might get a Friday or a Saturday email saying we need you right now. So just
I'm happy to contribute whenever.
thank you so much. So Lindsay Rittenhouse is here again, senior reporter at Age. Lindsay, how is life? How you doing? I know you got a big road trip planned.
I do, yeah. And in one more week of that vacation plan, going out to Cedar Point, going to Bonnaroo, getting an RV. So I'm excited.
That sounds awesome. Brian, we got to do an RV trip.
We could do a road trip, an agency road trip or something. I don't know. But
That'd be fun.
Are you can RV, Lindsay?
Yeah, between me and my husband, we'll drive it. It's a smaller, compact one, so nothing crazy.
I can't.
Yeah.
It's so fun. So we might call you while you're on the RV. You got to answer, of course. Maybe we'll do a segment there. That could be fun. What are we going to talk about, Brian? Lindsay?
Yeah. This is, I wanted you on for this segment, Lindsay, just because I thought you wrote a really important piece that came out this week, and very timely, I think, with the anniversary of George Floyd's murder, and honestly, with the Trump, sentencing, or whatever, what the right wording is, but I just think it was a very important topic, and I think a lot of times in our fast-paced news cycles, there's a lot of times where we kind of can forget certain headlines, or we're so busy that we get caught up on other things, so. I just wanted to, for people that didn't read the story, it was about diversity in the advertising industry, but kind of taking a look at, with all the commitments that we've seen in the past few years, what has happened to those commitments. And, obviously advertising is an industry that struggles with diversity. So kind of just a look at what's happening, especially with, what's going on around the world, around different laws and things like that. So, Lindsay, I just wanted you to kind of explain a little bit on the what this story was about, and why exactly now.
Yeah, well, we had been hearing, I think, for a while from different people who would say things like, oh, I feel like progression on diversity is waning, or I feel like companies are going back on their commitments. And I was just digging into that, trying to make sense of all that. Like, what does it mean exactly? What's the bigger picture here? So I kind of landed on several issues that were happening at the same time, which is within diversity, equity, and inclusion, those specific departments, there have been cuts. So, there have been layoffs and various budget cuts across agencies and marketers, and DE&I was being affected. I heard sometimes it's the first to be scrutinized. And then outside of that, layoffs just are disproportionately affecting people of color. Marketers are scaling back their budgets on hiring, diverse vendors, and in, allocating media dollars to reaching diverse audiences. So all of these things are kind of, while like looked at, you could look at them separately, they're just all happening and really creating this like feeling of companies deprioritizing diversity. And like, to your point, that's all these commitments were made after George Floyd and in 2020, and now a lot of these companies are going back on them. So it's disappointing. And then at the same time in the U.S. you had a Supreme Court ruling in June 2023 that effectively ended affirmative action in college admissions. And then there's all these new bills in primarily southern states that are trying to kind of hinder diversity, equity, and inclusion within public schools. But that's also causing like some concern in corporate America, where they're like, okay, well, how are we talking about DE&I and even if it's happening in public school systems, are we the next to be scrutinized? Like, our bill's going to target us, so now we have to think about the way we're talking about our programs. And it's just kind of like, yeah, really causing like an environment where people feel like DE&I and just diversity across the board is being deprioritized.
Yeah, and when I spoke to a few executives like privately, they were saying like, they were in states that weren't, seeing any of these bills passed yet, but they were saying, should we preemptively change how we talk about, like, if we have the word Black in like the name of a conference or like a mentorship program, should we scale that back, out of fear, right? And
Yeah.
I thought that was really interesting because, what does that affect recruiting efforts for people of color going into the industry, like who maybe they, that helps this is a program for me, right?
Yeah.
Very, if it becomes more vague, like, does that, become a challenge? I don't know. But what you were seeing, it was across the board, in your opinion, Lindsay? Like, it wasn't kind of like, and look, we can't go the whole industry, but like,
Yeah.
in your opinion, like, was this, you think like a broad thing that's happening?
I think it's pretty widespread. Yeah. A lot of marketers are under scrutiny and they're cutting in various places. And it just feels like DE&I feels like a place to cut. And of course, there are exceptions. There are companies that are still committing to the work and doing really good job. And they're going to be the ones that succeed, because we know businesses who are diverse, who hire diverse, and obviously invest in talking to diverse consumers are going to end up, performing better. So, but it does feel like there are more companies than not that are pulling back or making cuts, which is, yeah, disappointing. I would say it's widespread. Yeah.
Right. And to me, it's like the science shows the more diverse your employee base is, the better, like the creativity and the more like financially stable in the long term you'll be. So did you get any insight why, if they know this fact, they know that the research supports diversity in the workplace, then why are they still continuing now to cut it?
That is a really good question. I feel like it's just every conversation I had was why, because there's just been so many, business cases for diversity, and I don't have an answer for you. It's just, I mean,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
stopped sort of like calling it just racism. I don't know. Like, what is
Yeah.
it? It's hard.
And part of it is, you mentioned earlier, Lindsay, like, historically, these are the departments that usually get cut first in bad times. And I think it may be just like the industry acting how it always has acted, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's just like a kind of like second nature. It's, let's cut the
Yep.
department that aren't, we hear this all the time, Lindsay, like money, what is it? There's like a certain term, but like money drivers, right? Like,
Hmm.
view DE&I as clear-cut revenue drivers where you can point, like, but I think that's an old way of looking at it, right? Like,
Yeah.
you have conferences now like, Black Week, that are trying to change that notion that like diversity, doesn't have a direct correlation, to or DE&I specifically doesn't have a direct correlation to business results. But I think that's, if I had to like put something on it, like, I think it is that idea, Yeah.
And I think a lot of companies still, a lot of agencies anyway, you're seeing some agencies like centralize and they're calling it all talent operations across a holding company. And within that is DE&I. But, a lot of the commitments back in 2020 were to integrate DE&I throughout the entire company, to have your DE&I officer, looking at the work, talking to clients. And I talked to one chief diversity officer after my article went live, who was cut from their company in like a similar move of the centralization, and they were at the top of one agency, so they were cut. And that person was like, I talk to clients, I have relationships with clients. And like it felt like to that person that, their company didn't even understand what they were doing. And to just, put the lump D&I within talent, and okay, we can make cuts in talent and HR, like, okay, but it's more than that, and it should be looked at more than that. And clients care about it. So yeah, it's just an old way of thinking, I think.
Right. And when things get centralized, right? Like it's almost like in the multicultural argument, like total market was like this thing that got adopted, and it was a way, it actually didn't benefit multicultural or POC owned agencies, because it like took the directness away from it. Like the idea that like we're gonna directly focus on this. But I did see that in your article. I did see like some agencies say that, we're gonna focus on like, diversity within the work, right? Or something like that. We're gonna like centralize, not just like, we're not gonna just have it on talent, we're gonna have it across the agency. We gotta see where that goes. I don't know how I feel about that yet. Because there are agencies that are, I think, taking a stance, right? Like I think Martin Agency, like they have like their behind the scenes like programs, for like production, of like commercials and things like that. And I know like Vita Harris at FCB, she's purposefully like built a program where they look at each like piece of work from a diverse lens, there are ways that agencies are doing that already. I just think it's not, I guess, not the best look to cut, a department head or something like that,
Yeah. And what does that signal to your employees, that your employees of color, especially? I mean, the chief diversity officer was talking to was like, I got so much outreach. Like, you've just done so much important work. I'm shocked. I'm so upset. One person who had been with their agency for like 30 years was like, I finally felt seen when you were appointed and doing all this work. And now it's really disappointing to a lot of people.
And whereas like like from a recruitment standpoint, like I don't know if you talk to students about like this specific topic, or like how important you see it, from like college students, or I guess how top of mind is this? Like,
I know that like MPMS and MAPE programs are huge for students. I remember being in college, and that was a huge driver and motivator for a lot of people. A lot of applications were submitted through those programs that have helped countless people. So and I know that those are still programs that Havas Chicago like looks at and hires from. So I know those programs were super important when I was in school. And I think that's still that sentiment and that drive towards those programs are super helpful. And there's a lot of agencies that back those. So I'm hoping that those programs can still get recognized. And I see that students still look to those as a North Star.
Mm-hmm. I would say on the recruitment front, I did talk to a recruiter who said, back in 2020, after George Floyd, there was a huge, push, like we need to get a certain amount of diverse candidates and stuff. And that person told me that that's really not a mandate anymore, which is pretty disappointing. But I think it also goes to, recruitment versus just preparing people and for the next, phases of their career, and how, retention needs to be thought of as well. I mean, like when I talked to Marla Kaplowitz from the 4As, she didn't have hard data on how many people of color are being affected by layoffs, but she does have data on the amount of, people of color in the industry are at, junior or mid-level, and that's where the cuts are happening. So, there is a problem with it just moving people through the pipeline and getting, people of color elevated as well. So
It's important to recognize this. So I appreciate you covering it. Once again, what are some of those agencies that are doing a really good job? Did you discover any of those, Lindsay? Because we want to give them a shout out so our listeners can know where to go and focus their time there.
Well, I know, Brian mentioned the Martin Agency. I know they've made strides, I think, in this area. Wyden and Kennedy, I know I've talked to a lot of times, and they, seem to do a good job. I noted Empower in this article because I thought it was interesting. They did have a bunch of kind of losses and some layoffs recently, but they doubled down on diversity, hired a chief diversity officer at the same time. And while they've had to make cuts in other areas, they also doubled down on investing in diversity and DE&I. So I thought that was notable.
Yeah, and I think this leaves me with two questions. Like one, do we need to rethink? And when I say we, I guess the industry, right? We need to rethink what DE&I, the role of DE&I actually means, and how can we make sure this doesn't become just part of the cycle or continues as part of the cycle? And two, does this put pressure on the programs like MAPE and others that are already carrying the load in a way of bringing, POC just members into the industry, right? Because there's only so much that programs can do, right? And I just wanted to shout out a few that we know of, like I know Agents in Advertising, Agency DE&I is another program, 212 and NYC, Black at Can. There's a lot out there that you should check out, and it's not just recruiting; it's just focus on diversity in general. But it's I guess those are my two questions, and we'll see if we can answer that.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot more I think we're being done on the impact of all of this. This is kind of laying out the problem. What's the impact? Yeah.
Wonderful. So they can find that article on Ad Age. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Still up. Good. Anything else you guys want to say? Lindsay, thank you.
No, thank you for having me on. It's an important topic. I hope, the article just sheds light on this issue and maybe makes some companies rethink some of their decisions. I hope more companies do better in this area. So,
hopefully in the follow-up article in a couple months to a year from now, we can talk again and be a different story for sure.
Right. But yeah, thank you so much, Lindsay, for hopping on and for doing the important work. And I'm sure this won't be the last time.
No, she'll be back.
Thanks for having
on the RV. She'll be calling in.
I'll give you my take on roller coasters or something.
Roller coaster review segment.